Welcome back to Works with My Home, and today I'll show you exactly how to install the Aqara U200, connect it to Apple Home and set up Home Key. This installation was completed on a uPVC multipoint door here in the UK, and I'll point out a couple of things I've learnt during the process. Whether you've already bought the U200 or you're still deciding if it's the right smart lock for your home, this guide follows the complete installation from start to finish without skipping any steps, so feel free to pause the video and follow along on your own installation. Stick around till the end for my verdict as well. As some of you may already know, I'm installing this on my brother's door. I've already been using the Aqara U200 on my own front door for the past year now. Before we get started, you'll need a few basic tools: a Phillips screwdriver to tighten the screws, a drill which is optional depending on how you choose to mount the outdoor keypad, a measuring device like a tape measure, and I'll explain why that's important in just a moment. You'll also need the Aqara Home and Apple Home apps to set up the lock once it's installed, and finally a compatible Apple Home hub such as a HomePod Mini or an Apple TV 4K, which acts as both a Matter controller and thread border router to enable Apple Home and Home Key. Installation is straightforward, but taking your time during the setup will make everything much easier. Before fitting the lock itself, we first need to make sure the cylinder is compatible. If you're replacing the cylinder at the same time like I am, there are one or two extra steps before fitting the lock. However, if your door already has a compatible cylinder installed, you can skip this section and jump straight to fitting the lock. My brother's existing key doesn't meet Aqara's compatibility requirements. Firstly, your existing key must not exceed more than 39mm from the face of the cylinder, otherwise the lock won't fit correctly. Secondly, the cylinder needs to protrude by at least 3mm beyond the handle to allow the mounting plate to attach securely. And finally, the key must be less than 5mm thick, otherwise it won't fit inside the lock. If you do need the adjustable cylinder, which in my opinion is the better option because of how secure the lock mounts to it, let's take a quick look at what's included. Starting with the keys, you get 4 in total, and they're comically long for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why Aqara chose this length, but it is what it is. You also get the adjustable cylinder itself, which can be configured from 60mm all the way up to 130mm, allowing it to fit a wide range of doors. Extension pieces are supplied in 3 different sizes. You get 2 20mm, 2 10mm and 2 5mm extensions, giving you plenty of flexibility to match your existing cylinder. A cover plate is also included to give the outside of the cylinder a much cleaner finish. You'll also find a cylinder adapter. This transfers the movement from the U200 into the cylinder and effectively performs the same job as a key or thumb turn. Finally, you get a small Allen key and the screws required for installation. Now we know what is included, let's remove the existing cylinder. Removing it is fairly straightforward. Start by removing the cylinder retaining screw, which is normally located on the edge of the door in line with the cylinder. As far as I'm aware, there will only be one retaining screw holding it in place. Once that's removed, you'll need to gently work the cylinder out of the door. Take your time here and don't force anything if it feels tight. The easiest method I found was to insert the existing key, turn it slightly and use it to gently wiggle the cylinder free. It gives you a much better leverage and makes removing the cylinder a lot easier. The next step is probably the most important. You need to measure your existing cylinder and make sure the new adjustable cylinder matches those measurements exactly. Start by measuring the overall length, in my case 70mm. Next, measure from the centre of the retaining screw hole to each end of the cylinder. Mine measures 35mm on each side, but yours may be different, so make sure you measure yours carefully. The Aqara cylinder comes configured at 60mm, which tells me I need to add 5mm extensions to both sides. With those measurements confirmed, we can configure the Aqara cylinder to match. When fitting the extension pieces, be aware that each one comes in 2 parts. There's a circular metal insert which sits where the key passes through, and on the outer extension piece, which matches the profile of the cylinder. You can install them individually or together like I am here. Once they're in place, tighten the screw underneath using the supplied Allen key. One tip I'd recommend is tightening each extension screw before installing the extension, as the threads are quite tight from the factory. Now we can repeat the process on the opposite end where the cylinder adapter fits. One important difference here is that you don't install the circular insert on this side. Only the outer extension is required, so the cylinder adapter can fit correctly. Again, make sure everything is seated properly before tightening it down securely. Once you've finished assembling the cylinder, it's worth checking the overall length one last time to make sure it matches the original cylinder you removed. In my case, the Aqara adjustable cylinder now measures 70mm, exactly what I needed. Before fitting it into the door, use the cylinder adapter to turn the mechanism a few times and make sure everything rotates smoothly. If it feels stiff or catches at any point, I'd recommend slightly loosening the extension screws and trying again. Once you're happy with the movement, you can fit the cover plate to the outside of the cylinder. Tighten it using the supplied Allen key until it's nice and secure. One final check at this stage is to test the cylinder using one of the supplied keys. Again, you're looking for smooth operation with no resistance or pushback when turning the key. With the cylinder fully assembled, we can now fit it back into the door. Just like when removing it, I found using the key gives you much better control and makes it easier to guide the cylinder into position. The cylinder adapter is also useful for making small adjustments while lining everything up. Your aim is to align the retaining screw hole in the cylinder with the hole in the door. Once those line up, you know the cylinder is fully seated. At this point, you can reinstall the cylinder retaining screw. Aqara recommends using the retaining screw supplied with the adjustable cylinder, so that's the one I'll be using. Before moving on, I'd recommend one final test. Lift the door handle and make sure the multipoint locking mechanism engages correctly. If everything works as expected now, you're in a good position to install the U200. With the cylinder installed and working correctly, we can move on to fitting the U200 itself. We'll start with the back plate. Position it over the cylinder and you'll notice the two threaded holes on the front of the cylinder line up with the mounting plate. These are what secure the back plate to the door. Using the two screws supplied with the cylinder, tighten them evenly until the back plate is firmly secured. Once installed, give it a gentle tug just to confirm everything is sitting securely. Next, use the Allen key supplied with the U200, not the one from the cylinder kit, to tighten the three security screws. These are located at the bottom and one sits centrally at the top. It's a little fiddly because of the limited space, so take your time. These screws provide an extra layer of security by locking the back plate firmly in place. You may remember from my unboxing video that I mentioned using the supplied foam pads to fill the gap beneath the handle. During the installation, I found that they were actually not needed, so I left them out. How the back plate is installed, we can fit the cylinder adapter. It only fits into the cylinder one way, while the hexagonal end fits into the lock itself. I found it the easiest method was to line up the three mounting holes first, then rotate the thumb turn slightly until the hexagonal adapter drops into place. The three screws supplied with the U200 begin securing the main body to the back plate. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing and turning on notifications for future installation guides, reviews and unboxing videos. Continue tightening the screws evenly until the lock is firmly attached. Spending a little extra time here will help prevent issues later on. Before fitting the battery, I'd recommend another quick functional test. Lift the door handle and rotate the thumb turn. You should see the multipoint locking mechanism engage smoothly when locking and fully disengaging, again with unlocking the door. If everything operates correctly, you're ready to power up the lock. Simply line up the yellow marker on the battery with the yellow marker inside the lock, then push it in firmly into place until you hear it click. If everything has been installed correctly, the front status light will illuminate, letting you know the lock has powered on successfully. Now let's move outside and install the keypad. The keypad is where you'll use the passcode, fingerprint sensor and Apple Home key, and it communicates wirelessly with the lock to control locking and unlocking. Remove the rear cover and decide how you'd like to mount it. You have two options. The first is using the supplied adhesive pad, which is the method my brother has chosen for now. The second, more permanent option is fixing it with screws, and that's where you'll need the drill we mentioned earlier. Once you've removed the backing from the adhesive pad, carefully line the keypad up and press it into position. The adhesive feels surprisingly secure and I don't have any concerns about it coming loose. Next, you want to remove the inner cover to access the battery compartment. Aqara includes the 4 supplied AAA batteries, which is always a nice touch as not every manufacturer does. Once the batteries are installed, don't forget to refit the inner waterproof cover. You can then position the keypad slightly above the mounting plate and slide it down until you hear and feel it click into place. Give it one final gentle tug to make sure it's fully locked and onto the mounting plate. With the physical installation complete, we can now move into the Aqara Home app to configure the lock. Before starting, make sure you've already downloaded the Aqara Home app and created an account. Once you're signed in, tap Add Accessory and the U200 should appear automatically. If it doesn't, you can simply scan the Aqara QR code found on the lock. Once connected, you'll be asked to confirm a few details such as the accessory name, its location, and the door handle orientation. Next, you'll need to create an administrator passcode and register your fingerprint. One thing worth mentioning is that whenever you want to add users or make changes to the lock settings in the future, you'll first need to wake the keypad by pressing any number. This allows your phone to reconnect to the lock over Bluetooth. Registering your fingerprint works much like setting up Touch ID on an older iPhone. Simply follow the on-screen instructions until the fingerprint has been captured successfully. The final step in the Aqara app is updating the firmware. This process can take up to 15 minutes, so keep your phone, keypad and the lock close together throughout the update. The firmware update happens in 3 stages. First, it downloads the update, which only takes a few seconds. Next, it transfers the firmware to the lock. Finally, the lock installs the update itself. Interestingly, on my installation, the progress reached 37% before the lock restarted and completed successfully. It caught me by surprise at first, but thankfully that's completely normal. Once the firmware update has finished, you'll be prompted to calibrate the lock. Simply select your door lock type and follow the on-screen instructions. The entire process takes no more than a couple of minutes and is very straightforward. If you do make a mistake, don't worry, you can simply start the calibration again. Calibration is important because it teaches the lock exactly when your door is fully locked and fully unlocked, helping it operate reliable every time. With the lock fully configured in Aqara Home, the final step is adding it to Apple Home. To do this, simply scan the Matter QR code located beneath the Aqara QR code on the lock. Because you're pairing the lock directly with Apple Home using Matter, you'll be guided through Apple's setup process, where you can choose the room and customize a few additional settings. If your setup uses a compatible Aqara Matter hub, your pairing process may look slightly different. As I don't have one available, I can't demonstrate or verify that method. Once the lock has been added, you'll then be prompted to set up Apple Home Key, which in my opinion is still the best feature of the Aqara U200. You'll have 2 options. The first is Express Mode, which allows you to simply tap your iPhone or Apple Watch against the keypad to unlock the door without Face ID or Touch ID. The second option requires Face ID or your device's passcode before unlocking, giving you an extra layer of security if you prefer it. And that's it. You've now successfully installed and configured the Aqara U200, connected it to Apple Home and set up Apple Home Key. So what's my verdict? For me, this is an easy checkout. That probably won't come as a surprise, especially considering I've already recommended it and installed it on my brother's door. I've been using the Aqara U200 on my own front door for the past year and it's been extremely reliable. I've had hardly any issues with it. It works perfectly with a standard UK door lock and multipoint locking system, and overall I can confidently recommend it. If you've got any questions about the installation or the lock itself, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to help. If this guide has helped you, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you're planning to install the Aqara U200 yourself, or if you have any questions about the installation. As always, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.